And welcome once again to the 10-Minute Life Coach, this very simple podcast, which we go for just 10 minutes or so, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more, of a quick life lesson, something you can quickly digest and move on with, something you can easily put into your life, or sometimes, be honest, every lesson isn't for everybody. Sometimes they just kind of reinforce something you already know, and you can easily move on from there. You can get more information about the podcast, including where you can subscribe if you're not a current subscriber, at the website, 10minutelifecoach.com. My name is Jay Cleveland Payne. I am the 10-Minute Life Coach, and thank you so much for being a part of the podcast for today. Today is a very simple lesson that it pertains to all things in life, but I'm going to use it in the context of a project to kind of paint a picture, per se. So if you have any sort of project that you have going on that you want to get started and quickly get done, or maybe you know it's a long-term project, so it's not so much a quickly get done, but a get-it-done thing, I have 4 words that go along with working any sort of project, any sort of life action, to be honest. They are setup, teardown, pacing, and spacing. In my evolution in work and business, dealing with project management and just dealing with small projects I have, personal projects, getting them done, those 4 words have turned out over and over again and have turned into my personal mantra, even if there's not so much a listing for some sort of really catchy professional term for it. But all the different styles of leadership, all the different styles of management, and all different styles of workflow I've used, I'll have some part of these 4 words in them. And these 4 words work out to pretty much anything you want to do that you want to call a project, even, as I've said, if you want to call your full life a large project, which I've also often said you should break it up into smaller projects, which works out great. Setup, teardown, pacing, and spacing. Let's start off first with setup. Everything you do, everything you want to start begins somewhere, and it usually begins with putting it together. If you have, for example, one of our radio station remotes, we have set up in the contracts for all of the remotes a person to come up and set up and tear down the remote. It's basically 30 minutes before and after the time. So if you pay for a 2-hour appearance by some personality, you get that personality, you get that DJ, you get that host there to yuck it up with all the fans and do all the things they want to do. But you also pay for a secondary guy, and sometimes, if the DJ wants to go ahead and do it himself, he'll take the setup and tear down, pay himself. But you pay for a person who doesn't necessarily have anything particular to do, but come there early, check out the layout, put everything together, make sure things are fine, and then throughout the afternoon, throughout the appearance, just do little light things like make sure things are lined up, set out more pencils, more papers, hand things out, help people around, show how things go. And at the end, when the personality is done, they can go off and take care of what they need to do, and that person tears things down. They take down the tents. They put everything away. They drive the station vehicle home, for example, because normally you have a station vehicle as your billboard. They take everything down, tear it down. The setup person, their job is to build it up. And every time you have a project, before you actually get started, you have to set it up. Before you go to the gym to work out, you've got to gather your gym bag and your clothes and get into the locker room and change for the session. You have to make sure you have your water bottles. If you want to have something else, that's fine. If you have a lesson plan for your workout, you've got to have that plan together. You've got to do some pre-work, some setup work, some get-there work to get started. If you're going to work on a woodworking project in your garage, you don't just, turn on the saw and just start slamming wood together. You start off with some sort of setup. You start off with the plan you're going to build on. You do some measuring. You make sure you have the right materials. You make sure you have the right tools. And then you line them up, get them together, make sure everything is working, and then you get started. Teardown is a similar thing. When it's all said and done, you don't just leave your toys lying around the room. You tear it down. You put things away. You clean things up. You tune things up that need to, make sure things are put away in the best possible manner so that next time you need them, hopefully for a pure setup, they're ready to go. They're in good working order. If something needs to be replaced or something needs to be tuned up, that's going to take more than just a couple minutes in your teardown session. You make a note of that, you put it in a schedule to be done, and you get it done before the next time you need it, before your next time you're preparing to set up for a plan. Setup and teardown are obvious in that they go together. You begin a project or you begin an appearance and you have to set it up. You've got to put up the posters. You've got to put up the banners. You've got to lay out the stuff on the table. When it's all said and done, you don't just leave your layout there in the middle of a parking lot. You fold up your tables and tear down your posters, and you tear it down. You take it home, and you maybe have an after-action report, which is what we do for our station events. Now, pacing and spacing, that goes along with the actual work being done, what you're doing, what you're taking care of. And pacing deals with time, and spacing deals with actual physical space. So your pacing and the spacing that you do in your projects deal with how you have things planned out and how you plan to get to point A to point B to point C and beyond and beyond. You don't want to be a big rush and get all these things heavy loaded done on the front end and then have all this free time on the back end. And at the same time, you don't want to have all these things, physical things, kind of lined up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a big batch, and then at the tail end of it have a lot of empty space. If you're working towards a project that takes small adjustments and small pieces, let's say you're working an assembly of something. You've got people lined up in an assembly line type of dealing with 7 people. Let's use number 7. And everyone has a certain amount of time to get things done. The pacing needs to be specific. The pacing needs to be set so that when one person is done with something, they hand it off to the next person, and within moments, that person is dealing with what's been handed to them because the person before them is now being handed something else to work on and will soon hand it back on. And if the pacing is not correct, you'll have a bottleneck. Bottlenecks are things where things literally, the neck of a bottle, which slows down the flow of a liquid or whatever. Your bottleneck will be the slowdown point in your process, in your project, in whatever you are doing. So if you are looking at, let's go back to weight loss. I do a lot of weight loss stuff. Let's go back to weight loss. You're looking at losing 20 pounds, and you're pacing it out so that you lose a steady 2 pounds a week. That's what you're averaging in your plan. If you're losing 20 pounds, 2 pounds a week, 20 divided by 2 equals 10 weeks. There you go. So if you go along with your pacing and you go along with your plan, you can see that if you're progressing or not progressing, if you're not losing close to 2 pounds a week or you're losing a lot more than 2 pounds a week, you're doing something that's not exactly right. Spacing works the same way, except it's dealing with the physical space. Let's go back to that assembly line example we had, for example. Let's say you have everybody paced out fine, where everything is moving to a nice, steady pace. Everybody's timed out well. But the big issue you have is somewhere between person 3 and person 4, there's 100 yards distance where a person has to take their issue and go to the next issue and go back. In the meantime, that's a slowdown where the person from number 2 can hand off something to number 3 and be ready to go, and it's time he's not working, and it's also a slowdown for time he's taking off to stuff. So your spacing, how things are spaced out, how things are physically handled, can affect your pacing, can affect how you get things worked out, can affect how things are handled. You need to look at the material, full material, and deal with these 4 terms to help you get your projects done in a timely manner. And sometimes even working on your setup and your teardown and your pacing and your spacing will not help you get it done in a timely manner. Bottlenecks may occur, delays may occur, catastrophic errors may occur. Someone may just want to stop working. That may occur. But whatever you have for a project, whether personal, whether business, take these 4 words in account: setup, teardown, pacing, and spacing. Use those terms and use the work inside those terms to help you work out whatever you have that needs to be taken care of. And thank you so much for joining us for today's edition of the 10-Minute Life Coach. This is, as we say, a simple podcast, 10 minutes of life lessons to give you something that you can quickly digest and use, or hopefully, if it does not something that really strikes you, something that at least reinforces something you're doing well already. We have plenty of things to share with you and plenty of things that we can help you out with. And if you're looking for information, let's start with this podcast. This podcast lives on the website 10minutelifecoach.com. You can subscribe to it via Stitcher, via Blueberry, via Spreaker, and many other places. Google Play is another place as well, and of course on iTunes. We ask you, if you're not getting this regularly, subscribe to the feeds via whatever podcast you like, or subscribe to the newsletter where we'll email you a link to this podcast every single week. And we ask, if you feel up to it, send us some sort of rating and review from wherever you get this podcast from, or just send it to us via the website so that we know how well we're doing, how well we're not doing, and what we can do to improve or just keep things going there as well. If you're looking for more of my projects, you can go to my main website, jclevelandpayne.net. That is J, Cleveland like the city, letter J, Cleveland like the city, and the word PAYNE.net for a listing of all the other things we have going on, including podcasts and publications and appearances. All that's listed there at that website as well. If you have any other questions just out of the blue, you can send me an email. Send it to info at jclevelandpayne.net, and I will get to it as quickly as possible. Once again, thank you so much for joining us for this podcast, and hopefully you got something great out of it today. And next week, we'll have another great, very quick 10-minute life lesson for you on the 10-Minute Life Coach.